In pursuit of the Pulitzer, or how the 12th Jurassic Photography Festival bumped me into reality. When I was going to the 12th Jurassic Photography Festival, I was convinced that my moment had come. In my mind, I was already writing the speech I would give when I received the Pulitzer Prize for an outstanding series of interviews with photography aces. There was no other option. After all, I wasn't going there just to ask questions. I was going to understand, explore, discover the secrets of art, and then, of course, take over the world. And then I entered the festival, and the first thing I saw were people sitting at tables, eating sandwiches, and talking about how the last light was weak. I should have suspected something even then. Where were the great manifestos about the essence of beauty? Where were the metaphysical truths? Why wasn't anyone staring into the distance reciting Barthas? Nothing, complete amateurism. But okay, I decided that maybe if I talk to the true masters of photography, the light of revelation will finally shine on me. Oh, naivety. Arkadiusz and the definition that no one expected. The first to go was Mr. Arkadiusz, a lecturer, photographer, and journalist. I was hoping to meet a man who would say in his calm, distinguished tone, "Yes, child, sit down, and I will tell you about photography as poetry of light." Meanwhile, the first thing I heard was, "And who exactly is an amateur?" No, seriously? I came here for answers, not additional questions. I struggled for a moment, mumbled something about an amateur being someone who does not exhibit photos and simply has fun. But Mr. Arkadiusz just smiled. No, amateurs exhibit and publish too. My eyes widened. So what, my previous thinking about photography has just collapsed? So if I am an amateur, doesn't that mean I can hide behind my inability? That maybe I should even take responsibility for what I do? Oh no, that was definitely too much for the first day of the festival. But Mr. Arkadiusz had no mercy. Do you know that Jerzy Luzinski, one of the most important Polish photographers, worked in a design office? And according to this definition, he would also be an amateur? That was a straight path to a nervous breakdown. Because if even icons of photography can be called amateurs, who has the right to say that they are professionals? The world I knew was crumbling before my eyes. And then came another blow. You know what? I would throw the word amateur in the bin altogether. It means nothing. And great. My whole identity fell apart, and it was only noon. Magda Kozińska and the grayness that is beautiful, supposedly. After this warm-up with Mr. Arkadiusz, I decided to calm down and talk to Magda Kozińska. After all, photography is also about emotions, and I wanted to feel. The problem was that I felt nothing, especially since the weather decided to be completely indifferent to my expectations. It was gray, dull, bland, no dramatic clouds. No mystical rays of sunshine. No wow effect. Well, bad luck, I sighed. Magda looked at me as if I had just expressed the opinion that the Mona Lisa was an average portrait after all. But grayness is also beautiful, she said. I widened my eyes again. Grayness? Beautiful. That's like saying that under-seasoned soup is an emotional experience. But everyone says that the best light is the golden hour. I tried to save myself. That light rules photography. Yes, Magda agreed. But gray is also an emotion. No. How is that an emotion? After all, the emotion is the delight in a fabulously colorful sky. So what? I can take photos on a cloudy day and they will still be good? So all my previous excuses have just fallen apart? The world in which photography required ideal conditions has just fallen to pieces. And I felt that if it continued like this, I would leave this festival with a completely changed identity. Marcin Weron and the philosophy of I am an amateur because I can. After a conversation with Magda about grayness, which was supposed to be beautiful, and after Arkadiusz philosophical musings on the definition of professionalism, I decided that it was time for something simpler. Something that would give me a break. A man who would simply say that photography is a pleasure, not some multi-level structure of existential meanings. And then I met Marcin Weron. From the first moment, I knew that this would be something different. It was obvious that the guy had a completely relaxed approach. No pompous phrases, no mystical raptures, no references to Barthes, thank him for that. But the first thing that shocked me was that Marcin boasted about being an amateur. You see, I do what I want, when I want, and how I want, he announced with the nonchalance of a man who has achieved enlightenment. And when I die, I would like to be remembered for my photos, not for being a TV production manager. Okay, I respect that. The guy had a plan for his legacy. Some fight for a place in art history, others just don't want to be remembered for Excel spreadsheets. But what he said next was even more powerful. Professionalism, but understood through the prism of making money, can kill the fun, he said, and I almost choked on air. How is that? How is that? I've thought my whole life that the more someone develops in something, the more they love it. Well, yes, money. Look, he continued, I made music, first for fun, and then the orders came. And suddenly the fun ended because I had to compose country music with an emotional climax in the 20th second. So how is that supposed to be fun? I felt like crying for the world. It's like I discovered that chocolate makes you fat, or that Santa Claus doesn't exist. So what? Professionalism is not the end of the road to photographic heaven, but a trap. But Markin hasn't finished with my illusions yet. And in general, be inspired, but don't imitate, he added. Because if someone takes another picture of me naked in rapeseed, I'll personally come and destroy this rapeseed. And that's where he got me. This was my photographic revelation. No golden hour, no perfect light, but the fact that originality is more important than perfection. Because when everyone does the same thing, it doesn't matter how well they do it. To sum up, Marcin is the man who took a picture of all my photographic ambitions, improved the contrast, and showed me that being an amateur is not a flaw, but freedom. And who would have thought that I would like it so much? Pyotr Wroblewski and the brutal truth about workshops and people who want to destroy you. When I got to the conversation with Pyotr Wroblewski, I had already made some shocking discoveries. Amateurs are no worse, professionalism kills the fun, and rapeseed should be legally protected from more skimpy photo shoots. I was hoping that maybe I would finally hear something here that would allow me to return to my original vision of photography as a mystical experience. And so I did. Except that instead of mysticism, I got a bucket of cold water on my head. There are photographers who conduct training courses, but they shouldn't conduct them because it's just stardom, he announced in a calm tone, as if he was talking about something obvious. Meanwhile, I blinked a few times, trying to understand if he was talking about me. Didn't I come to this festival convinced that my mere question about art made me already worthy of a Pulitzer? But Pyotr had no mercy. People meet such stars and hit a wall. Because these great masters, instead of teaching, humiliate you, he continued. And at that moment, I imagined festival photography gurus as strict sensei who look at your photo, fall silent for 5 long seconds, and then with a cold smile say, maybe you will become an accountant. Pyotr continued, it is not about showing someone how bad they are. It is about helping them develop. Everyone has their limitations, even those who think they are limitless. There was a moment of silence in which I tried hard to look like a person with broad horizons and absolutely not feel like a person who came here for easy answers. And then the topic turned to the internet. You know, I noticed a long time ago that the internet is like a toilet at the train station. Pyotr sighed. Please? I asked, trying not to spit out my coffee. Because anyone can relieve themselves there, he shrugged. Suddenly, all the online discussions about photography came to mind, where one person wrote beautiful photo, another wrote complete amateurism, and a third added a gif of a burning garbage can. And now look, Pyotr continued, people seek approval online and are surprised that the internet doesn't love them, as if they had some romantic idea of self-love. It was all too real. But look, some guy signed as Hennick007 pastes Brad Pitt's profile picture on his profile and throws hate at you. And what? Do you care? That Brad Pitt said your picture sucks? Okay, he had me there. Because really, if Brad Pitt went to my profile and wrote weak frames, it would be more exciting than sad. And then Pyotr summed up. You know, some people build an army of followers. The kind who will attack every hater like rabid dogs. That's a strategy. And at that moment, I decided that I had made a strategic mistake. Because I didn't have an army of followers. It was time to make a decision. Either start worrying about online experts or start gathering loyal people who will answer every weak picture with "you don't know anything." But then I realized something else. And who is the happiest in all of this? I asked in desperation. Pyotr shrugged. Those who take photos because they like it, not for likes. So in the end, all this chasing for approval, fighting for professionalism, collecting hearts on social media, was it all pointless? To sum up, instead of a Pulitzer, I got a brutal lesson about the internet and people who want to destroy you. But at least now I know that if Brad Pitt writes to me that my photos are bad, then, well, I'll have something interesting to tell at the next festival. Carol Bartnick and the Great Truth About Equipment, Filters, and Holy Patience. After a series of conversations with photographers who questioned my previous thinking about what photography is, I was ready. Ready for a finally rational, specific conversation about technique, equipment, and what camera will make my photos absolutely brilliant. Because we all know that it's all about equipment, right? And that's where Carol Bartnick came in. Carol, an ambassador for photography brands, a man of filters and landscapes, looked at me and said something that should have been obvious, but to me it sounded like blasphemy. The best camera is the one you have with you. How so? So it's not the number of megapixels. Not a body for 20,000 zloty. Not a lens that costs as much as a used car. For a moment, I wanted to protest. After all, someone once told me that without the right equipment, my photos will never be good enough. But Carol continued with a straight face. People ask me about the equipment, the settings, which Nikon or Canon to choose. And the truth is that the most important things are the place, the light, and the moment. My eyes widened. Because if the equipment is not the most important thing, then it means that I have to admit that my poor photos are my fault. That was a real shock. Landscape photography, an extreme sport for people with nerves of steel. After this introduction, Carol started talking about landscape photography. I was hoping it would be something like, you go in, you take a snap, you have a beautiful photo, you collect likes. Well, no. Sometimes, for every successful outdoor session, there are several unsuccessful ones. What? So what? It's not enough to go out once to watch the sunset and have a masterpiece right away. Sometimes you come back home without a single photo because the conditions were terrible. Carol continued, as if he was talking about something completely normal. But it motivates you to come back to the same place in different conditions. Oh no, I didn't invest in a camera to come back empty-handed. But Carol didn't stop. For example, I went to the same place for sunrise 4 times before I managed to catch the perfect conditions. 4 all-nighters for 1 good photo. 4 all-nighters. I can barely stand getting up early for work, and he got up 4 times to find fog and nice light. So, landscape photography is not only an extreme sport, but also a mental wrestling match with your own frustration. Filters, small lens, big difference. Once I had digested the fact that my patience had to be significantly extended, Carol started talking about photographic filters. Filters are something that can change a photo by 180 degrees. Oh, that was more my pace. Because filters are something specific, something I can buy, attach, and immediately see the difference. Finally, some advice that can be implemented without patience. A polarizing filter helps get rid of reflections, and a graduated filter helps even out the exposure. So magic exists. I wanted to ask him which filter would make my photos look like the works of masters, but Carol just smiled and said, "But there's no point in overdoing it because when you start adding things that weren't there, it's more like graphics than photography. Oh, so I shouldn't overuse Photoshop after all. So what, do I have to take good photos right away and not count on sliders in Lightroom?" Epilogue more than photos. Finally, Carol summed everything up in a way that made me rethink my life once again. The most important thing is to enjoy being outdoors. A photo is an addition. Great. So I came here for a recipe for great photos, and I got a philosophical lesson about enjoying the moment. But did I really want to enjoy the moment, or did I just want to take photos that would get a lot of likes? That was a question I still didn't have an answer to. But one thing was for sure. If I wanted to take a really good landscape photo, I better start practicing patience now. Christian Bielatowicz, a photography mystic and a man who photographs fog. After talking to Carol about filters and patience, I was sure that nothing would surprise me anymore. And then I met Christian Bielatowicz. I expected a specific conversation about photography, but I got a philosophy of life. Instead of a discussion about lenses, I heard that minimalism is beautiful, and the best topic could be fog. Fog. So I'm looking for dramatic light and perfect frames here, and Christian says that air in a semi-solid state will suffice. The topic chooses you. It got even stronger. You don't choose the topic chooses you. So I shouldn't look, but wait. I could already see myself sitting in the park and hoping that some photographic calling would come to me like a dove for crumbs. But Christian kept going. You have to cut yourself off from the hustle and bustle. If you keep looking at other people's photos, you'll never find what's inside you. So my hours spent on Instagram are doing more harm than good? That was too much. I came for technical advice, but I got an existential manifesto. Just start. Finally, the conversation turned to photographic development. I was hoping for a simple list of how to become better. And what I got was, you have to act, just do. It sounded like a Zen master told me, be water. But one thing was for sure, I had no more excuses. I couldn't complain about the equipment. I couldn't wait for the perfect conditions. I couldn't say I didn't know where to start. After that conversation, I knew one thing. It was finally time to take pictures. And the fog? Suddenly it started to look really inspiring. Adam and the Art of Looking at People. A conversation with Adam was supposed to be my last hope. After a whole festival full of philosophical ecstasies, manifestos about patience and vague metaphors, I needed someone to tell me that photography is simply taking pretty pictures. Oh, naivety. Adam, a portraitist, had something about him from the very first moment that made you feel good around him. Maybe because he treated amateurs with genuine sympathy. The cool thing is that amateurs enjoy every new discovery, every lesson. It gives you incredible energy. It sounded beautiful, but with each subsequent sentence, I felt that I was in for another life lesson about photography and, unfortunately, about myself. There is no portrait without conversation. Adam told me that portrait photography is not just about setting the light and choosing the right lens. Sometimes this work is more like psychotherapy, he admitted. People come to the studio, they think they are just taking pictures, and suddenly they start talking about their stories, emotions. You have to be ready to accept it. I was silent for a moment. So it's not enough to say, look to the left and press the shutter? Empathy is key, Adam added. Because how are you going to show emotions in a portrait if you don't feel them? It was like another blow to my photographic ego. First, it turned out that the equipment is not the most important thing. Then, that the light doesn't always have to be perfect. And now that a portrait is more about the conversation than the photo itself? Criticism is not your enemy. Finally, the conversation turned to how to develop. You can't overcompliment everything. Criticism is necessary, Adam said. I nodded vigorously, but inside I felt a tightness. So my every photo is wonderful if you feel it is won't work? Everyone has to make their own mistakes, he added. But if someone who knows more wants to help you, it's worth listening. And something inside me snapped again. So, maybe I'm not a genius after all, and it would be worth listening to people who have been doing this longer. What remains after a conversation with a portraitist? I left the festival with a head full of new thoughts. Adam reminded me that photography is not only about technique, but above all, about people. And if someone tells me again that a portrait is just a photo of a face, I'll tell them to sit on Adam's couch and see how wrong they are. Epilogue. In search of the Pulitzer, I found something else. I came to the festival convinced that photography is about technique, equipment, and the golden hour. I left with the knowledge that it's not the camera that takes the pictures, it's me. That fog is a topic worthy of attention. That criticism can be useful, and that the internet is a train station toilet full of random opinions. I wanted to be a great reporter, but I became a humble amateur who already knows that a good photo cannot be taken by willpower or an expensive lens or holding the camera at the right angle. You just have to feel and take it. Did I get the Pulitzer? No. Did I get something better? Yes, distance. And as it turns out, it's quite a good tool in photography.